I'd like to call this hearing of the Senate Jobs and Economic Growth Finance and Policy Committee to order. Today is Monday, March 21st, 2022, and we do have a quorum. Our first bill up today is Senator Mathews. Is Senator Mathews here? I don't see him. So why don't we kick down to the second bill? We'll go ahead and start with Senator Dornink, Senate File 585. Welcome to the committee, Senator Dornink.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Senator Dornink, I understand you have a A1 authors amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Senator Draheim, would you move the A1 authors amendment? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Senator Dornink, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senate File 585, as amended, Senate File 585 provides supplemental budget appropriation of $8 million in fiscal year 2023 to the Redevelopment Grant Program administered by DEED. The Redevelopment Grant Program helps local communities fill the financial gap that often exists for the projects looking to reuse and redevelop existing sites. While the cost of initial investment to redevelop a previous use site can seem daunting, the return on the investment for this type of redevelopment project is very impressive. As you can see in DEED's handout in your packet, over the life of Redevelopment Grant Program, just over $75 million in state investment has leveraged well over $3 billion in private investment and has helped create and retain over 30,000 jobs. I have a testifier with me today from the Economic Development Association of Minnesota, the City of Rosemont, the City of Pipestone, as well as inland development partners who have worked with the Redevelopment Grant Program. I would like to share with you how important it is in helping turn potential projects into reality into these communities. Our first witness is Sam Ritchie from the Economic Development Association of Minnesota, who will discuss the need for these supplemental funding. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to my first testifier.
Thank you, Senator Dornink. Welcome back to the committee, Mr. Ritchie. Please state your name for the record and feel free to begin when you're ready.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sam Ritchie. I have the pleasure of lobbying on behalf of the Economic Development Association of Minnesota, or EDAM. EDAM is a statewide association of over 400 members, both public and private, from all corners of our great state. We're very grateful to the committee for taking the time today to hear Senate File 585, and also want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of this committee for establishing base funding for the Redevelopment Grant Program in the upcoming biennium in last year's omnibus budget bill. For several budget cycles in a row, the Redevelopment Grant Program has not gotten its own line item funding, but rather has relied on transfers from the Minnesota Investment Fund at the discretion of DEED. And while we're extremely grateful for this transfer authority and for DEED's repeated use of it, for reliability and planning purposes, EDAM's members prefer to have dedicated, consistent, and reliable funding for the Redevelopment Grant Program. And while we were pleased to see DEED use its transfer authority for fiscal year 2022 to provide redevelopment funding, there is still no funding dedicated for this purpose in 2023, which is why EDAM supports the bill in front of you here today. In EDAM's most recent member survey, the Redevelopment Grant Program scored as the single highest program priority, and the demand for the program greatly exceeds supply. It delivers powerful value and impact in our communities of all sizes and in every corner of the state. Redevelopment projects greatly increase the tax base, create and retain jobs, diversify and strengthen local economies, maximize private investment, and help to breathe new life into underutilized areas. And as you've heard from us in the past and can see in the materials in your packet, this program's transformed over 1,300 acres of land, creating and retaining nearly 30,000 jobs. The $75 million in redevelopment funds awarded to date have leveraged well over $3 billion in private investment and have increased local tax bases by more than $50 million. Given the impressive track record of the program, EDAM feels that stable, consistent, and reliable funding for the Redevelopment Grant Program would deliver a huge return on investment for our communities. These projects are complex, multifaceted, and require a lot of time and planning in order to be successful. Consistent and predictable funding would greatly help our communities prepare and plan for these complicated but impactful projects. So on behalf of EDAM's over 400 members statewide, we again respectfully ask this committee consider funding the redevelopment grant program in the base budget. So I'd now like to turn it to Eric from the city of Rosemont to talk about redevelopment funds and how they've been successfully utilized in his community. I believe he is joining us on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Van Oss. Please state your name for the record and feel free to begin when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Eric Van Oss. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Rosemont. Let me share my screen. Let's see here. So we had a project in our downtown district that began in 2020. Can everyone see the photo that's up? Okay. We had a 2.5 acre site that was kind of in the heart of our downtown district. It was centered on the Rosemont Plaza Mall. It was an old mall that was built in the 1960s, and it hadn't really had any significant investment since the late 70s. Both the buildings were blighted, as you can kind of see in the photo, and neither of them were up to code. They were about half full with tenants and the other half was vacant. There was a damaged roof, drainage issues that drained into the residential properties behind the building, and then they were full of asbestos as well. There was also a local bar on the site as well that was becoming an increasingly problem area for our local police. None of these buildings were up to code. They had some numerous code issues as well as health code violations. The costs for upgrading them were pretty significant to bring them up to code, and none of them really dealt with any exterior upgrades or facade work. So the city thought it was in our best interest to redevelop the site entirely into something else. So we worked with Ron Clark Construction on a redevelopment plan for the site, which can be seen here. It included one phase that was 124 market rate luxury apartment units, and then a 4,000 acre retail component. We applied for grant funding through deed for the following projects. One was to bury the power lines and underground them behind the building. One was to upgrade the sanitary sewer main. One was to add a sidewalk and trail to enhance the pedestrian connection to the area. And then the bulk of the grant funding was for the demolition and asbestos remediation of the existing buildings itself. So this work began in 2020 and it was completed in 2022 in March, actually just 2 weeks ago. So tenants have begun to move in. This is a rendering of the finished building. And then here is kind of a picture of the exterior a few weeks before opening. And then one of the interior units ready for move-in. The total project cost was $30 million. The private investment was $25 million. We had $5 million in public funds, which was through a variety of TIF funding, Dakota County grants, and also the deed redevelopment grant. The original market value of a property was $1.5 million with a tax capacity of $27,000. The new market value is $22 million with a tax capacity of $320,000. So a pretty significant upgrade in the market value and tax capacity for the city. In addition to the improvements, just getting rid of the blighted buildings, we've added more housing to downtown and new retail. There was 60 total construction jobs for 2 years of the project, and then 7 total permanent jobs for on-site management. We reduced the impervious surface area pretty significantly and added significant landscaping to the site itself, and then enhanced pedestrian connections downtown. Overall, the project has been received very well and has been seen as a big improvement for the community. That's kind of the project in a nutshell, and I can answer any questions if you have any.
We'll go ahead and get to questions after we get through all the testifiers. Next, I have Mr. Jones from Pipestone. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and feel free to begin when you're ready.
Yes, hello, my name is Jeff Jones. I'm city administrator for the city of Pipestone. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Deeds Redevelopment Grant and how it has helped my city. I would like to share my screen as well.
I think we need Mr. Von Ost to stop sharing before we can flip it over to you.
Okay.
Sorry, let me jump off this. Stop.
We can no longer see it, so he's good.
Okay, I think you're good. Go ahead and give it a try.
All right.
Nope.
Oh, you did. Have I shared my screen?
Nope.
Okay. Technology. Give me just a moment here. I need to find that star. All right. As I said, I wanted to speak regarding the development grant and how it's helped my city. Pipestone's entire downtown is on the National Historic Register. It's composed primarily of beautiful red stone buildings built in the 1880s and 90s. Unfortunately, in 2016, we had two buildings in our downtown, which you see in this first shot, that were blighted, condemned, and frankly, dangerous. Now, they don't look too bad from the outside, but on the inside, you can see what had happened over a number of years, given an extended and large hole in the roof of the buildings. It caused leakage to the point that it rotted out 2 floors and actually had a continuous hole from the top floor into the basement. I jumped ahead of myself there. Obviously, this was a situation that was a blight on our downtown historic area. And so in 2016, the city purchased the 2 buildings, and in 2017 applied for and received a redevelopment grant. We received a grant of $91,500. The city matched that as required by the terms of the grant with $91,500 of our own funds. And with those funds, we abated the asbestos that existed in old buildings such as this. We demoed the properties and put in some infrastructure to facilitate future development. The bare lots were then sold to a local developer who spent $2.1 million on the site to build a restaurant and sports bar. This is the finished product. At the same time as this transaction and demolition was being done, the city created a TIF district with the funds to be used to rehab other downtown businesses and buildings that needed similar upgrades, not to the extent of this, of course. In summary, the redevelopment grant helped my city get rid of 2 condemned and frankly dangerous buildings. As you can see the condition, they were in danger of collapse. We eliminated those. We built this beautiful new building, which fit right in with our downtown, as you can see, which generates $28,000 in new tax revenues. We created the TIF district that I mentioned that is allowing us to help update and rehabilitate other buildings in our downtown area so they don't get to the extent that these 2 buildings that we took down had reached. And the restaurant that you see has 28 new full and part-time jobs that did not exist prior to the receipt of the redevelopment grant. This is a program that works. And so I respectfully urge you to continue to fund this program so that we can have other success stories such as this. I too can take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones. We never got your screen, so if you could just please send your presentation to Ms. Lee. She'll get it
certainly
on to
will.
the rest of the committee.
Thank
Next, we have Mr. Shaver from Inland Development Partners. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and feel free to begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Shaver. I'm a partner with Inland Development Partners. I'm taking a little different approach that I'm on the private development side. I don't have a presentation to share with you, but I have been involved in our industry for 38 plus years, and prior to Inland Development Partners and forming it 6 years ago as president and CEO of Opus Development. The areas that I'm going to focus on with the committee today are that impact our commercial and redevelopment activities. There are four primary areas that I want to focus attention to. First and primary is our rising input costs associated with our projects. Second is in redevelopment and its unknown variability associated with it as developers take on these projects. Third is gap and the accelerating issue in the but-for test associated with our seeking public assistance, and then just general employment challenges in trades and business. So the first and the primary that I want to bring to your attention, and I'll do it through example of two projects that I'm bringing through entitlement right now. We're planning on breaking ground this June on, but one is in Shakopee, Chair, in your district. Year over year, pricing has increased from March of last year, so we're repricing today. It's up 68% for that particular project. Surprise, since we repriced it again in August of this past year, August 21, it actually had jumped over 21% just in that period. And so from the developer's perspective, trying to program and anticipate these large spikes in costs and trying to absorb them is a challenge. That particular project will yield 630 jobs when it's all said and done. Second is a similar project in Dayton, Minnesota. In that particular project, it wasn't up 68, it was up 44% year over year, and only 19% since August. But and it will have programmed up to 240 jobs. So you can see that our challenge today is trying to price in the current environment, that we're in relative to input costs increasing, across the board from steel, roofing, concrete, labor. There's not a category of our inputs that is not increasing in the current environment. So without the assistance of the Redevelopment Grant Program association with DEED and EDM, you can see how these soft monies really do help to support those various projects. That's one of the primary issues and challenges we face in the development community today. Second point was unknown variability in the redevelopment process. As has been detailed out by Mr. Van Oss and Mr. Jones, there are many unknowns when a developer gets on the project. Those unknowns, and I'll speak to a specific project that I built when I was at Opus. It's Excelsior Crossings, which was a former super value warehouse in Hopkins, right at 169. And we transformed that 30-acre, I would call it a obsolete freezer cooler building that had been operating since the 50s with super value to a new 1 million square foot office project that was initially leased by Cargill Corporation. But the issues that we face are very similar to what has been described to you already. It's the unknowns associated with watershed, water quality. Many times you can't estimate what is taking place subsurface in these redevelopments beneath these projects. But at the end of the day, that project yielded for the city of Hopkins, end result was 4,500 jobs. It has a current assessed value of plus 150 million and adds $5 million to the tax base every year since we put that in place. And that was it was built in 2007. My third point is related to the gap accelerating in the but-for test with our public financing. And so, with that said, the significant challenge that we have are land pricings continue to increase. I've touched on the cost, construction costs and labor But then the financeability and the financing costs and the pressures put on by the lending community associated with these rising increase in cost, as well as the associated city fees and issues associated with it. And we just recently completed a 200-unit multifamily project, very similar to Mr. Van Os's in the city of Robbinsdale. But since we've built that, modeled it, our taxes are up $1,000 a unit, translating to $90 to $200 in base monthly rent increase. But it was with, we had a deed, on that particular project. And yeah, it is truly a success, but you can see that there's increasing pressures on our ability to effectively build good developments for these communities, increasing our tax base without having deed and the other public support that we have behind us. And the last and fourth point that I'll make is associated with a challenge that everybody faces, but we've got an issue associated with our employment, that the trades, many of the trades people that are associated with the development of our project are leaving this industry, and this, as well as a significant gap in our semi-skilled labor force. So I appreciate hearing me today. I can't tell you enough how our partnership with DEED and the appropriate projects has been significantly impacted, and their associated support of what we bring in line. So I would respectfully encourage you to consider the bill in front of you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. And just to let committee members know, we have a couple of folks on DEED online if you have any questions. Do we have any questions for Senator Dornink or any of the testifiers? Mr. Ritchie or Mr. Shaver, the handout's pretty impressive. $75 million and over what period of time was that granted?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to let Deed answer that specifically. I don't know
Okay.
the exact time period on that, but it's the life of the program.
And anybody from D, can you tell me how far back that goes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Meredith Bakk, and I'm the Executive Director of the Community Finance Office, and that number goes back to the beginning of the program, which started in 1998.
Wow, okay. And so we've granted, boy, in 24 years, we've granted 75 million, generated over 3.2 billion in private investment, comes out to about a little over 2% of the total project cost. Can you explain how this money is helping to draw in that private investment?
Well, Mr. Chair and members, I'd be happy to let any of the economic development practitioners weigh in. I'm the lowly lobbyist, but as you can tell, a lot of these are really complicated sites that aren't going to draw this initial investment unless there's a partner like the state or the government here to draw that initially in. And one of the things we at the Economic Development Association, and why I think this committee is so interested in it, is there really are jobs 3 different times with this redevelopment program. You get the initial cleanup and site preparation. You get the construction jobs that follow to build whatever's going to go there, and then you get those permanent jobs at whatever establishment is put there. So, there's a lot of vacant sites that I think we all can think of around our home districts and things, and they're not attractive for private investment until there's a public partner like this. So it really does help show that if you were to get started on a project here, that there's going to be help and somebody trying to make it work along with you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Senator Dornink, any closing remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for hearing Senate File 585. As we heard, very important program, great investment and return on investment. With that, I just want to, again, thank you for hearing the bill and considering it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, Senate File 585 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you, Senator Dornink, and thanks to all your testifiers. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we're going to go back up and Senate File 84 was Senator Mathews. Welcome to the committee, Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to present Senate File 84. Several years ago, the legislature granted an economic relief program to the Mille Lacs Lake area in response to decisions made at the time that closed or limited the lake and the fishing seasons up there and the impact that that had on businesses. In the meantime, the situation surrounding the pandemic has continued to exacerbate the problems up there. And so with the support of many of those in the community, this bill has come forward asking for some further relief in the forgiveness of these loans that were made. And to explain that, Mr. Chair, I believe Mr. Wimmers from Mille Lacs County, I believe, is on Zoom, and I'm happy to turn it right over to him to help explain the situations here in one of my local counties.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Wimmer. Please state your name for the record and feel free to begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mike Wimmer, and I am the Mille Lacs County Economic Development Manager. Part of my duties include managing the administrative reporting to the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development on the Lake Mille Lacs Economic Relief Loan Program. I would like to note that Mille Lacs County did not charge any loan administration fees to businesses through the program and receives no administrative funding from the state to continue to manage the program. The Lake Mille Lacs Economic Relief Loan Program was created in 2016 to assist businesses in Mille Lacs, Aitkin, and Crow Wing counties who experienced significant negative financial impacts due to the decline in walleye fishing on Lake Mille Lacs from the Department of Natural Resources restrictions. 37 businesses were assisted across the 3 counties through this loan program, and as of today, only 3 businesses have ceased operations, showing the positive impact the program has had in assisting local small businesses through this period of ongoing financial difficulty. Per the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, leisure, hospitality, and accommodation make up 11% of the share of employment statewide as of 2019. In the 3 counties included in the program, that share of employment is significantly higher than the state average, with 29% of total employment in Mille Lacs County being tied to the hospitality industry. Moreover, as we are all well aware, the COVID-19 pandemic hit hospitality businesses the hardest of any sector of the Minnesota economy. Many hospitality businesses have been forced to drain personal savings accounts or take on substantial debt to keep the lights on through the pandemic on top of the relief loan. The issue that necessitated the relief loan program, the decline in walleye fishing on Lake Mille Lacs, continues to impact businesses to this day. Walleye fishing regulations as set by the DNR continue to necessitate walleye fishing restrictions and closures, negatively impacting area businesses and putting them at a deep competitive disadvantage. Finally, businesses have used the funds to diversify their services and to highlight other fishing and recreation opportunities on the lake, but it takes time to shift consumer awareness of Mille Lacs offering more than walleye. By forgiving these loans, you would be able to provide businesses with a longer runway to see these diversification and marketing efforts bear fruit. Due to the uncertain timeline of when the local, state, and national economy will begin to resemble normal again, or when walleye fishing restrictions on Lake Mille Lacs will be lifted, many businesses who participated in the relief loan program are deeply concerned about the impending loan payments. Mille Lacs County supports Senate File 84 as introduced by Senator Mathews. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we also have Mr. Nelson from Deed and the Tax Benefits Unit. If there are any questions, does anybody have any questions for Senator Mathews or Mr. Wimmer? I'll have a quick question. Sorry, Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair Pratt, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. My question, and I don't know if this is a council question or what, the changes we're doing in this statute would only affect this one program. And, deleting that 50% portion of the bill on the second page, 2.13 through 2.16. There's not an ongoing program other than the people that have already applied for this program. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I believe, and Senator Draheim, I believe that would be correct, and maybe Councilor Mr. Wimmer could help confirm that.
Mr. Nelson, would you be able to answer that question? Is Mr. Nelson on?
Mr. Chair and members, I was just going to say that this is just session law, so this is nothing in statute. So basically what this bill is doing is just going back to the session law from 2016 and getting rid of that provision that talks about forgiveness. And so it would allow it to be forgiven, and then Section 2 just allows it to be forgiven. So it's nothing permanent. It doesn't affect any other programs, just for this, just that session law that established the Mille Lacs loan economic relief program. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
It answers the first part. Can I have a follow-up, Chair?
Senator Draheim.
Okay, thank you. So how much money is left in the pot, I guess, of money then if we forgive these, and there'll be a fiscal impact on that, but, so no one can apply, correct, to this program? Is that my understanding?
Is there anyone from DEED that can talk about what's left in the fund or what's in the fund, what the fiscal impact might be? Mr. Moe?
Mr. Chair, Senator Draheim, as of last year, there was about $401,000 of estimated loan repayments that would come in to DEED. But that was a year ago. So presumably there have been some loan repayments since then, and that number is now smaller. We did request a fiscal note, but it was incomplete by the time we gavelled in today.
Thank you.
I guess, I was going to have similar questions around the fiscal impact and whether or not we had a fiscal note, what the impact to the underlying loan fund would be. And we'll follow up with DEED and try to get those, those answers before we roll out the omnibus bill. Any other questions for Senator Mathews or any of his testifiers?
Mr. Chair, I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Champion. I was told you did, and I still forgot. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Senator Mathews, maybe you said it and I missed it. When this loan fund was established in session law, how much did we provide into this loan fund?
Mr. Chair and Senator Champion, it was created right before I came into office, so I don't have that number on hand.
Mr. Mum, do you have, Mr. Mum is looking it up.
Mr. Chair, Senator Champion, the appropriation in the 2016 finance supplemental was for $3.651 million.
So just so that I'm clear, Mr. Chair, so we're asking, or we've been asked to forgive the $3.651 million that was once designed as a tool for economic development in that area, so there'd be low-interest loans and people could, use that fund in order to expand or at least prop up the business, and then they pay back so that others will get the benefit. So are we being asked, Senator Mathews, to now convert that into a grant, and therefore no one else will get the benefit of the loan fund?
Mr. Chair and Senator Champion, I believe, yes, it would essentially be converted to a grant. I would say it was for the purpose of trying to keep businesses afloat at the time. I'm not aware of anyone that was trying to grow or expand based off of that. I think it was simply trying to stay afloat during that time, continuing on through the pandemic period. And so, other than that, yes, this it will essentially convert it, in my understanding, to a grant type of program.
And
And Mr. Chair, just one
Mr.
last question.
Senator Champion, maybe before we get to your follow-up question, as I understand it, this was set up as a disaster relief account, not a revolving loan fund. So I don't, as to Senator Draham's initial question, there are no new loans or grants being made out of this fund.
So, Mr. Chair, is that to say that it was set up as a disaster relief fund, so then there was no expectation that any of the money would be paid back? Because if that is what you're saying, then it wouldn't be any need for us to talk about it being forgivable, because it sounds like it was a forgivable loan.
Mr. Chair
The disaster contingency.
and Senator Champion, my understanding, based on the language in session law and some of the strike-through language, is it was set up initially for at least half of those loans to be paid back. And I don't know the status of each individual case of who has paid back what along the way. But this bill then goes ahead and essentially forgives that other 50% that's left outstanding.
And Mr. Chair, just so that I'm clear, so there's 50% that was not to be paid back. Was that by way of a competitive grant that they would determine which 50% would not be paid back?
Senator Champion, I understand Ms. Dannon is on from Deed. My understanding is it's 50% per loan or not in the total amount. And the proceeds were being paid to Deed back into the disaster contingency account. But Ms. Dannon, are you online?
I am, excuse me, I am Chair. Darielle Dannon, Government Relations Director at Deed. Apologies, let me adjust myself. So yeah, I'm happy to run through some of the basics here real quick. Sorry about that. I thought my colleague was on, but apparently he stepped out for a moment. So yes, so this program allowed us, the Commissioner of Deed, to provide 50% loan forgiveness for businesses that remained in business for 5 years. They had to remain in business for 5 years to obtain that loan forgiveness. And that would be loan. So this right here, our best estimates on what the fiscal impact would be. And as the chair said, this would be a fiscal impact to the MIF Special Revenue Disaster Account, which is where these loans were set to be repaid, is assuming that the Mille Lacs County projected loan period payments are accurate, which we of course think they are. We would expect that there'd be sort of a total loss to that account if this bill passed of about $400,000.
I'm sorry,
Hope that's
400,
400,000. Yep.
$400,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So there's 32 loans in question here. So
Thank you.
hopefully that's helpful and provides a little bit more clarity to the committee.
Thank you. We appreciate it, Ms. Dannon. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm just saying that I'll go back and take a look at this, because if it started out at 3.651 million and they indeed had the opportunity to identify businesses who don't have to pay, I think 50% of the loan back. And so to the Deed representative, Ms. Darielle Dannon, so would that be discussed? Well, it sounds like someone would get a loan, and then if they remained in business for 5 years, then it would be an automatic trigger to forgive 50% of that loan, and then they would be required to pay back the other 50%? Is that what I'm understanding? I just want to make sure that I'm right about that.
Ms. Dannon?
Chair and Senator Champion, that is correct. That at that 5-year trigger, if they were still in business, we would be allowed to forgive half or 50% of the original loan, correct?
All right, and so now the other 50% is what we're looking at right now, and for it just to be converted to it being totally forgiven. Okay. Okay, so then, well, I got one last question. So, Ms. Dannon, it sounds like then that a business who was interested in the loan had to go through financing and looking at their finances in order to make sure that they were able and capable of paying back the loan. And now we're going to give them a grant if they've already survived those 5 years to say, yeah, we initially said 50%, but now we're going to make it 100% forgivable. Is that right?
Ms. Dannon?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, Senator Champion, you are correct in the portion of your inquiry that was asking if these are, if they were required to do a loan, sort of do all of the work that would be necessary to get a loan. So yes, they have loans and payback requirements with the state of Minnesota. They were required to do that initially to get these funds. That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Champion. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Senator Mathews, any closing comments?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the committee's consideration of this bill.
Okay. Members, Senate File 84 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you, Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Mr. Wimmer. Next, we have Senator Bakk, Senate File 4072. Welcome back to the committee, Senator Bakk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I think this bill got referred to you because the IRRB is under your committee's jurisdiction, but actually it's probably more of an issue for the state government committee than it is for this committee. What the bill proposes to do is give the commissioner of IRRB the authority to create some retention separation incentives for our employees at the IRRB. We've been granted this by the legislature 3 different times in my time here. Most recently when we transitioned what was then Iron World, now the Minnesota Discovery Center, over to a nonprofit to run it. The legislature authorized an early retirement program at that time to mitigate the impacts on the employees at the IRRB. And then most recently in 2017, when we transitioned the ski hill at Giants Ridge from a state-run ski hill over to a private contracting firm that manages ski hills all over the country. And it's been very much a success. So we allowed that time also for early separation agreements with the employees at the IRRB who are state employees. When we did this in 2006, there were 9 people that participated. 2012, there were 16. 2017, there were 17. This proposal is a little different in that we're not looking to actually create an early separation incentive. We're in a position at the agency where basically the entire leadership team of the agency, there's 42 employees at the agency now. We've downsized it significantly from what it was previously. But of those 42 employees, there's 7 to 10 of them that are considered kind of the leadership level people at the agency. And they're basically all eligible for retirement on almost any given day. So really what we're looking to do here is create some flexibility among that employee pool where the commissioner would have some authority to offer some incentives to get people to not retire so we don't lose all the leadership team potentially on the same day. And just want to remind everybody there's no general fund money impact to these programs at the agency. The agency is funded through Statute 298, which is the taconite taxes. So it really is all local property tax money that pays for anything that we do relative to our complement of employees at the agency.
Okay. Any questions for Senator Bakk? Senator Osler? seeing none, members, this is going to be referred to state government.
Yep.
Following this committee. Well, I was going to entertain a motion to.
Mr. Chair, is your mic on? Because we can't hear you.
Sorry, I forgot to turn it on. Thank you, Senator Champion. So I was just saying that this was going to be sent to, this needs to be sent to state government. And I was going to entertain a motion. Senator Draheim, would you like to make the motion?
I just for discussion, that's why I brought it. I didn't know what the proper protocol was, because I agree it's probably has more to do with it.
Could you ask Senator Draheim to turn on his mic as well, Mr. Chair?
We've only been doing this for 2 years. so I
Yeah,
don't know why
sorry,
we don't have it yet.
Senator Champion, if you were here, I'm sorry, you would have been able to hear me. But what I was saying, thank you for reminding us to turn on our mics. But what I was saying is I know this is going to the next committee, and that's where this discussion probably should take place. I just don't know what the proper protocol, if it's to send it out without
Senator Draheim.
recommendation or just send it out.
I was going to recommend that it pass the committee and be sent to state gov, but
So moved.
all right. Senator Draheim moves that Senate File 4072 pass the committee and be sent to state government. Senator Bakk, any closing comments?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the committee's attention to this.
Okay. With that, members, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you,
See you in
Mr.
state
Chairman.
gov, Senator Bakk.
Senator Pratt, you have Senate File 919 up.
Yep.
Senator Pratt, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Go ahead, you want to move your bill?
Thank you. I move Senate File 919, and I would like to also move the A2 amendment.
All right, Senator Pratt moves the A2 amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Go ahead with your bill as amended, Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Madam Chair and committee, Senate File 919 makes some modifications to the wage theft prevention law that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor in 2019. The purpose of the bill is largely to address confusion around the implementation of the new hire notice requirements in the Wage Theft Prevention Act. Instead of inflexibly requiring the notice be provided at the start of employment, Senate File 919 allows the notice to be provided on or before the date that the employer provides the employee. I'm sorry, it allows for up to a 7-day, as amended, up to a 7-day grace period. We want employees to know what they're making before they start their jobs, but in some cases, it's just not feasible. We've heard from school districts and others that it becomes a problem, and so allowing some flexibility in that wage theft notification is important. It also clarifies that an employee's signature on the notice only constitutes acknowledgement that they've received the information, that does not create a contract. This is really just to clarify the intent of the law and shouldn't change anything substantially to what's being done today, but to make sure that there's no confusion. In addition, due to the confusion regarding employees whose rates of pay may change depending on their job duty, the bill requires the initial notice to include any pay schedule or range of pay for the employee who moves between job duties or classifications in their day-to-day duties. And it allows the initial new hire employee notice requirement to be satisfied for an employee if they've received all the required information through a collective bargaining agreement, employee handbook, offer letter, or other combination of these documents. Back when we established the original law, we had the Department of Labor set up a template of what a wage theft notification might look like, but much of the information already exists in some of these other documents, and so that employees are already being provided. In such instances, the employer will need to retain a listing of the referencing documents that have been satisfied in the notice requirements. The original legislation required any changes to the new hire employee notice be provided to the employee on the date that the changes take effect. Senate File 919 provides a little more leeway by allowing those changes to be provided in writing or by electronic means, and does not and clarifies that we're not expecting that the employee have to sign and return those. I talked to one of my grocery store owners, and that was never the intent, members. The intent was to have the employee acknowledge receipt of the initial wage theft, but we knew that we just wanted them to be notified that they would be receiving additional notifications without any changes. So for instance, if someone was changing the pay schedule, or if someone was getting a raise, I could just notify you. I wouldn't have to get that wage theft form signed. One of my grocers hired a young man, gave him the initial wage theft notice, and was so confused by the law and the implementation that he promoted this young man 6 times in a year, and had the young man sign this notice each and every time he wanted to give the kid a raise, which was well above and beyond what we were expecting. The bill clarifies that a change notice is not required when the employee provides discretionary pay to the employee. For purposes of this bill, discretionary pay is defined as compensation paid by the employer for which the amount and timing are not disclosed in advance by the employer and are at the employer's sole discretion. So members, this could be, some sort of end-of-year bonus is one of the examples that I think of where maybe the company had a great year and they don't have, say, a formal profit-sharing plan, but the owner wants to share in the good fortune with his employees. We shouldn't have to bog that down with regulatory bureaucracy. We should let the owner be generous and work with his employees. The bill contains 2 provisions that are specific to staffing agencies that seek to clear up confusion regarding the responsibilities under the law. It requires a checkbox on the initial new hire notice to indicate whether or not the hiring employer is a staffing agency, as well as space for the staffing agency to indicate the initial employer for which the employee will perform work. And it specifies that changes to the initial notice are not required for the employees of staffing agencies upon subsequent placements following the initial placement by the staffing agency. So what we'll hear, members, is that when someone goes into one of these staffing agencies in a temporary role, the amount they're going to be paid depends on the assignment that they're offered and the assignments that they accept. And that makes it very, very difficult for a staffing agency to say, here's what you're going to be paid ongoing, when it becomes truly a variable and by client schedule. In an attempt to prevent excessive punitive action, this bill specifies that DLI shall issue a written notice warning an employer upon the first violation of the employee notice requirements. The goal here, members, is to make sure that if somebody makes a documentation error, that they're not being held liable and maximum penalties. We want the employers to do it right. It also clarifies the discovery of one or more violation by the same employer at the same time is considered one violation. Again, if an HR manager is filling out the form incorrectly and they maybe do it for, say, a dozen employees with the same mistake, we don't want that to count as 12 different violations when clearly it was just a mistake. And it should not weaken the protections that we place for those who are being intentionally defrauded by an employer. And finally, Senate File 919 reinstates a cap on the amount of wages that DLI can collect in situations in which the payment of wages or commissions is not made within 10 days of the service of demand for payment. The previous standard was a 15-day cap on penalties, but when we were talking about this bill initially, DLI was concerned that it wasn't enough of an incentive for a company to comply. Current law permits DLI to charge and collect an unlimited amount of penalties, and we think that that creates an incentive on the other side not to come to an agreement. And quite honestly, this is the only situation in law that I've been able to find where we have an unlimited cap on penalties. Even in felony law, misdemeanor law, we cap the penalties. So this amendment raises the maximum penalty. The original bill says 15 days, the previous standard, up to 20 days. And members, I'm just trying to find a compromise here, quite honestly. I've reached out to the labor community, trying to get them to engage in this conversation, and I want to find a balance where we encourage the employer and the employee to come to that agreement. Madam Chair, that is the bill, and I know we have a number of testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. We will go to the testifier list, and then we'll save all the questions for after. If each of the testifiers could keep their testimony to under 2 minutes, so we can try and have enough time left for questions. We will go first in person, I think, is Justin Turge. Oh, actually on Zoom, from the Minnesota Society of the Human Resource Management. Go ahead, Mr. Turk.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Justin Turch. I'm an HR consultant in Duluth, and I volunteer as the Legislative Affairs Director for the Minnesota Council of the Society of Human Resources Management. We call that MinSHRM. We have about 6,000 members in Minnesota and 12 different chapters throughout the state. We fully support having strong laws that protect employees in the workplace and protect employers. And anytime we can clarify things up front, I think that's a wonderful asset to the employment relationship. Our members were concerned about some of the timing requirements in certain industries, particularly in public education and hospitality. As you've heard from other testifiers on other bills today, we're in an unprecedented labor situation right now. And oftentimes, businesses are struggling to find labor at the last minute to fill needed positions. And so this law really allows just a little bit of flexibility. I think it also comes into line with some of the other paperwork requirements that HR professionals deal with. For instance, the Form I-9 in the federal government, which is the document employees and employers need to complete to verify work authorization in the United States, has a number of days after hire that form is allowed to be completed. And I think this brings it, the wage theft statute, in line with that law. We also feel that the bill as amended does provide quite a bit of clarification in the language of the statute. There's Senator Pratt pointed out his story about a grocer. It was a very common practice for HR professionals in Minnesota, particularly those that are, that have an employment law background, to really be a stickler for this form because of the penalties that were there. And frankly, we spent a lot of time trying to comply with wage theft paperwork when we could have been spending it on other things, whether that's, a more fair and equitable workplace, a workplace that's free of misconduct, as well as just trying to find people to fill positions, whether they're bus drivers or concession stand attendants. So in short, Minnesota SHRM is very supportive of Senate File 919. We hope and encourage that all of you will consider the bill on its merits, especially in light of the concessions and offers that have been made by Senator Pratt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turk. We'll go to Zoom next, but after that, maybe if Todd Hill and Lauren Schothorst want to go up to the testifier table now, we'll be ready to go. We've got next up Bob Nuss, President of Nuss Truck and Equipment. Mr. Nuss, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to testify regarding the job, the wage theft law changes. I very much appreciate the modifications that have been made. As you know, a year or 2 years ago, we testified regarding the concerns we had with the additional burden of paperwork that it would, the law would place on businesses. And it, we're in a very competitive business. I've been in business in Minnesota since 1969. I've been in the heavy duty truck business. We have Mack trucks, Volvo trucks, and Volvo construction dealerships and branches. We just added our 9th branch in Monticello. Significant investment of over $10 million to grow our business with the needs of our customers. Our biggest challenges we face in business, like every other business, is the shortage of people, talented people that can go through the pipeline, learn the business, and take care of our customers. So we do everything we can. In the last year, we've doubled our 401k match. We've added 2 extra floating holidays, discretionary days for every employee. And as you brought up, the fact that we do a year-end bonus, which we've done several years in a row, we want to be able to do that with a letter to everybody simultaneously, not get signatures and converse with everybody if it's okay for us to send you $1,000 or $2,000. Hopefully I haven't seen the final revisions, but in listening to your comments and your descriptions, I feel that you've addressed a lot of the concerns we had. I think one of the biggest things that we saw that we do need to notify employees on is we do get garnishments of wages, and we do use the employee notice fund to them to notify the employee, because a lot of times the organization, whether it's a state, county, or tax issue, or a bill, or a divorce, or child support, the employee may not have been notified or may just have joined our company, but we do have to give them notice, and we feel that's a good use of that form, to give them proper notice in advance. But if the form, we use Dayforce payroll systems, and so we have the electronic forms that we have to, the forms are developed by the managers, approved by ownership, and also signed by the employer or employee who agrees to a wage increase. Obviously, we don't want to change wages if a person doesn't like that wage. I mean, a lot of times people don't like the wage they get, but that's what the job pays. And when I say that, we want them to be part of our team. And we have 350 plus employees with over 30 job openings right now. So we have a good reputation, and we want to be an employer of choice. So I appreciate the modifications you've made. When I haven't seen a final version, but we'll be happy when this is passed us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nuss. Next up, we will have Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Todd Hill with Hill Capital Strategies, and I'm here on behalf of my client, the Minnesota Recruiting and Staffing Association. With more than 800 offices across Minnesota, the Minnesota Recruiting and Staffing Association member companies employ on average more than 65,000 workers each week across numerous industries in the state of Minnesota. We consistently place candidates in jobs as engineers, healthcare workers, clerical, and administrative assistants. Staffing agencies play a vital role in helping Minnesota employers and employees maintain flexibility and entry into the state's workforce. Given the nature of our placements, and especially those related to healthcare, Senate File 919 provides our members with the flexibility necessary to quickly fill positions while also maintaining the protections sought under the original wage theft legislation. The ability to provide a pay schedule or a range of pay to employees move between different classifications or job duties, along with the other staffing agency exceptions, seem to us to be a common sense solution to a challenge our members face. And I recall, I think this is the last bill I testified on in 2020, right before we shut government down for COVID, and we still have the same challenges today. I think one of the things that's important for the members of the public and for the legislature to understand is how staffing agencies actually work. When we onboard a person, we don't necessarily know where that person's going to be placed or what job they're going to take, what their rate of pay may be. And so that presents some challenges for us when we call those individuals back when we have a placement for them and trying to coordinate the paperwork and getting that in on time. And it has become especially a problem for our members who are in the healthcare field. Oftentimes, there are a handful of agencies that provide temporary nursing staffing, and oftentimes we are contacted at the last minute and asked if we can find or place a nurse. It may be in the middle of the night. It may be a shift that's needing to be covered in just a matter of hours. If we have a qualified candidate, but we haven't gotten the paperwork signed by them up front, we can't necessarily place them. And so that nursing position in a nursing home or a hospital could go uncovered and with no one there to provide the work. So this bill giving us the ability to either provide a range, or you may work at a variety of hospitals up front, or the ability to kind of get that information caught up after we've had them placed, provides some great flexibility for us. We feel that the changes proposed in Senate File 919 go a long way towards improving Minnesota's existing wage theft law, and we hope that you'll consider this language and make sure it's included in your omnibus bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. We will go to Lauren next, and then to Ms. Lewis on Zoom. So go ahead, Ms. Schothorst from the Chamber of Commerce.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Schothorst, and I'm the Director of Workplace Management and Workforce Development Policy for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. As you know, the Minnesota Chamber is a statewide organization representing more than 6,300 businesses of all types and sizes, and more than 500,000 employees. The majority of our members are small and mid-sized businesses. Thank you for hearing this bill today and allowing us the opportunity to share our organization's perspective and why we've been advocating for some compliance and process improvements to the wage theft law. To reiterate very clearly what we said at the beginning of this debate, of the wage theft law in the previous legislative session, our organization does not support, condone, or approve of wage theft as a business practice. The message that we carried to policymakers as they considered the best approach to legislating on wage theft, the actual proposal itself, was to make sure practical feedback was considered and that caution was exercised, so those willfully engaging in labor trafficking or other such practices were not protected by ineffective laws already on the books, but that employers who inadvertently found themselves in violation of certain confusing or complicated new requirements were not considered to be such criminals. In other words, when the legislation was being debated, we heard that it was targeted at the less than 1% of bad actors who intentionally withhold wages from employees. And that was a direct figure used by the bill's sponsor in the House. But the proposal as drafted and now law affects 100% of employers, 99% of whom were doing it right already and in a way that worked for their operations and employees and was set up to their HR practices and software, if they could afford software systems. Now those good employers run an unnecessary risk that any error created by some of the redundant or confusing new requirements would subject them to the law's serious penalty. And to be clear, those penalties should apply to the bad actors. But scope is an important focus to our members and when overly broad and overreaching legislation is being developed. In addition, as you may recall, the new law was hastily enacted and the timeline for implementation was entirely too fast, and the rollout was plagued by confusing and inconsistent guidance. In speaking with many businesses and their employees, members of all sizes experienced significant administrative, implementation, and compliance challenge with the new law. I will say that DLI was very committed to working with our organization and others through this, but this just underscores the importance of utilizing constructive feedback during the legislative process and being mindful of enactment dates. I won't go into an example that I had in the interest of time, but as soon as the law was enacted, the coronavirus pandemic hit and has ushered in an entirely new set of HR management challenges and compliance risks before a full understanding of the law was able to fully take hold. And yet the law was the standard at the time. So we're here today to thank you all, and particularly Senator Pratt for his commitment to consider a few minor and reasonable ways to make compliance improvements to the new wage theft law so it's less costly and confusing for employers in Minnesota while still keeping with the spirit of the law's original intention. Thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective and support for these efforts today.
Thanks, Ms. Schothorst. Next up, we have Kimberly Lewis, the Minnesota School Board Association on Zoom.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kimberly Lewis, and I'm with the Minnesota School Boards Association. Today, I'm also representing the Association of Metropolitan School Districts, the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, the Minnesota Rural Education Association, and Schools for Equity in Education. We want to thank Senator Pratt for his continued work on the wage theft law, and we want to share our steadfast for our employees and ensuring that they receive information regarding their wages while being transparent and responsible with communications with them. As you can imagine, our districts and staff members have been through a great deal in the last couple of years, as has everyone else. But COVID hit us especially hard. We've incurred significant expenses due to COVID, and as such, districts were very concerned with any expenses that are duplicative or not necessary. Many of our districts had hired part-time help to help with this implementation because of the duplicity in some of the paperwork that we do. While we're sympathetic to employees who are experiencing wage theft, school districts are providing information to our employees. The implementation of the wage theft legislation has been costly to our districts, and with the addition of staff and processes, revenue has been taken out of our classroom and away from our students. We appreciate the inclusion of items in Senate File 919 that provide much needed flexibility to school districts while addressing notification to employees at the beginning of employment, including the amended version today of when notice must be provided to the employer with the first earnings statement, allowing the notice to be either in writing or delivered electronically, requiring the notice to include any pay schedule or range of pay for the employee who is expected to move job duties. We have a lot of folks that move between positions in our buildings. And in addition, we really appreciate allowing an employee's signature on the notice to constitute an acknowledgement. And we strongly support that the notice requirement is satisfied if the employee receives the required information through a CBA or collective bargaining agreement. That would help our districts tremendously. Again, with handbooks or offer letters or a combination of those documents, but especially the CBA. Though our districts always want to strive to comply with laws, we know that sometimes an error occurs, and we appreciate a written warning upon the first violation or something that we can work with in a training. Most of the time, those are training errors. Senator Pratt, we thank you so much for your continued efforts. We really appreciate that you've listened to us and our concerns over the last 2 years, and we sincerely hope that we'll be able to make these changes and move forward. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lewis. Next up, we have John Reynolds, and after that, Megan Hennon. Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Reynolds, State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business in Minnesota. First, I'd like to thank Chair Pratt for authoring this bill. NFIB supports Senate File 919, which makes modest improvements to the employee notice requirement and related penalties. Flexibility in providing the required wage notice will benefit Main Street businesses while still providing employees with the information required in the 2019 law in a timely manner. I've talked to many small employers, particularly small family-run agricultural operations and folks in the hospitality and restaurant business who are often hiring on a weekly basis during their peak seasons. The rigidity of the current law is a total disruption to their businesses during this time. Providing the notice flexibility given in Section 1 is common sense, and codifying current practices allowed by the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry provides good legal certainty that is important to good actors. As a state, we should strive to punish bad actors without harming good small businesses that make honest mistakes or end up in good faith disputes that involve administrative action. The current uncapped wage penalty in Chapter 181 is not only incredibly out of step with other administrative penalties, it may also be a due process violation under the prohibition on excessive penalties in the U.S. Constitution's 8th Amendment. In 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court found the 8th Amendment's excessive fines clause is an incorporated protection applicable to the states. Many legal observers have taken this to apply to excessive administrative penalties, such as the uncapped penalties in Minnesota statutes 181, 101. Further, as Senator Pratt alluded to earlier, most other administrative penalties in Minnesota law are tiered based on severity and include explicit test factors to determine the appropriate penalty amounts. This includes potentially serious violations of health codes, anti-pollution laws, and insurance fraud. We urge the committee to move forward with these modest improvements. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you to Chair Pratt for carrying this bill.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reynolds. We have Megan Hennon from the Association of Builders and Contractors, and after Ms. Hennon, we'll have Adam Dornink. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Megan Hennon with the Associated Builders and Contractors.
Our contractor members and the women and men they employ are the part of the 73% of construction industry in Minnesota that choose to be merit shop craft professionals. We want to thank Senator Pratt for his work on this bill. It makes several important changes while still leaving in place the protections for Minnesota workers to ensure they get paid promptly and what they're owed. To be clear, and to echo the sentiments of previous testifiers, we do not condone wage theft. We are looking for the statute to provide clarity, and this bill brings much-needed tweaks to Minnesota's wage theft law. This bill addresses a few issues that impact the construction industry that our contractor members were unsure about. For members who employ multi-skilled craft professionals and work on state-funded prevailing wage projects, the changes allowing employers to list a pay schedule or range of pay for employees who move between job classifications is important. It is not at all uncommon for these employees to work in several different labor classifications on a job, sometimes even in a single day. When you combine these scenarios with the fact that prevailing wage rates change annually and sometimes more frequently as issues about those rates come up that require adjusting by DLI, it's important we give contractors flexibility and clarity in how these wage rates must be reported to employees. This isn't flexibility or exemptions from the state's wage theft law. Contractors must still follow all laws regarding prompt payment, overtime, minimum and prevailing wage laws, and more. Our members appreciate the clarification in how notice violations are defined in this bill. If a contractor or employer makes a mistake in how the notice is disseminated to multiple employees, but the mistake does not result in any underpayment of wages or material issues for the employee, we think it's smart policy to treat it as one violation with only a warning issued. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hennon. Only two more testifiers. We have Adam Dornink, Director of Government Affairs, and then Commissioner Robertson. So go ahead, Mr. Dornink.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Adam Dornink. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters. We cover 12,000 members who are carpenters, floor covers, millwrights, pile drivers, and industrial workers. And the issue of wage theft largely impacts the multifamily sector of construction for us, the members that work in wood frame, drywall, and siding and other similar scopes of work. Every day in our state, we see carpenters who go to work in unsafe conditions who are not paid the wages they are promised, not paid overtime for the time they work over 40 hours, not paid workers' compensation, and they're not likely having their payroll taxes withheld, and oftentimes they are forced to pay back some of their wages to a labor broker. They're mostly paid in cash, and sometimes they're even offered drugs for payment. It's not uncommon for workers to have hundreds of dollars stolen every day or thousands of dollars stolen from them over weeks and months. And on construction sites right now, these kinds of illegitimate business practices are occurring. Tens of thousands of dollars can be owed to workers, and it's simply unacceptable. There are developers and general contractors working in the Twin Cities who have been warned about these practices, and they still allow this kind of work to go on. Now to the substance of Senate File 919, I want to thank Chair Pratt for his work on the bill and on this issue. The Regional Council was approached by some of our own contractors to explore changes to the pre-employment notification, and we support some of the language changes that allow for collective bargaining agreements to be used as pre-employment notification. And we understand the Department of Labor and Industry has worked to clarify some of that through their outreach. However, when it comes to the other changing consequences from fines to warnings, we object to some of these changes. And we also oppose efforts to limit penalties to 20 days. First, the limit places a challenge to recover wages in a timely manner when construction crews move around so frequently and sometimes have their wages stolen over an entire season. If workers have wages stolen for months or years, which we encounter regularly, it would not be fair for an employer to only have to pay back 20 days of penalties. And one of the central arguments, one that was just made by a previous testifier about wage theft, is that we need to focus on the worst of the worst offenders. And that's why, to us, limiting penalties to a certain time period isn't the best policy, and will send a signal to construction companies that if wage theft happens, there will be a smaller penalty to pay for breaking the law. Despite the temptation of low prices and behind some of these low bids, we see stolen labor, and behind that low bid is unpaid overtime. And all these things add up to workers who are exploited, bullied, threatened, and abused, and sometimes trafficked. For those reasons, we ask that the legislature continues to be vigilant about wage theft, and we oppose Senate File 919. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Dornink. And last but not least, Commissioner Rosalind Robertson from Dolly. Commissioner Robertson.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rosalind Robertson. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry. I'm here today to testify in opposition of Senate File 919. Before going into the specific concerns of this bill, I want to remind the committee of some of the many reasons for the Wage Theft Prevention Act and its requirements. At the department, we know firsthand the devastating effect of wage theft on working Minnesotans, both to their financial well-being and their health and safety in the workplace. But these negative impacts extend far beyond individual employees. Wage theft adversely affects employers who do play by the rules. The Wage Theft Prevention Act addressed some of these concerns by introducing criminal consequences for wage theft, increasing resources for the department, and increasing worker access to information directly related to their own terms and conditions of employment. Worker education and knowledge is an incredibly important component of combating wage theft. With that background, the department concerns can be broken down into three main categories. First, some of the proposed changes will roll back much needed worker protection established in the Wage Theft Prevention Act. Second, some of the changes specifically remove necessary deterrents to bad employer behavior. And third, a number of the proposed changes are unnecessary because the department already reads the language to do what the proposed changes are attempting to do, and we've communicated that in our guidance. Just a few examples. Line 3.22 through 3.24 and 3.26 through 3.28 eliminates the requirements that employees be informed of changes to the information provided in the initial notice prior to the date change take effect, and instead allows the employer to communicate the change in the earnings statement following the date the change take effect. The department has concern about this change because the purpose of the notice is to provide employee notice of changes to employment conditions before they work under the new conditions. This change would allow employers to make a change to an employee's wages and not communicate that change for up to 31 days. Line 4.4 through 4.8 eliminates the ability of the department to issue penalties upon the first finding of a violation of the initial notice or change notice requirement. Currently, the law allows the commissioner to issue civil penalties up to $1,000 to employers who are found to have repeatedly or willfully violated the initial notice or change notice requirement. The department is concerned about the proposed change because it takes away the department's ability to issue a penalty for a willful violation and take away any incentive for an employer to comply or even attempt to comply with the law until after they are caught. Similarly, Section 2, as amended, establishes a 20-day cap on penalties for failure to pay wages owed after a demand by the commissioner. The department is not supportive of this penalty cap because it provides no incentive for an employer to pay the wages demanded and owed. Finally, there are proposed changes that add language allowing for electronic distribution of notices and signatures. The language and the department published guidance already allow for electronic distribution of notices and electronic signatures. This change is unnecessary. In conclusion, the department's goal is to ensure the law as implemented provides strong protections against wage theft. This bill makes the goal harder to achieve, which is why the department opposes the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Robertson. Members, are there any questions for Senator Pratt or for any of our testifiers? Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions. First, I just want to point out that it looks to me that the penalty is equal to 1/15 of the unpaid wage. Is that correct? So the penalty isn't actually arbitrary. It is 1/15 of what the worker was not paid, correct? That's line 27 on page 4.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and maybe I can ask the Commissioner to clarify what the existing law is.
I'm sorry, Senator Pratt, who did you say?
Maybe the Commissioner would like to weigh in on the
Commissioner
existing
Robertson.
statute.
Commissioner Robertson.
Madam Chair, Senator Pratt, if you can give me just a second, let me make reference here. My apologies, I don't have all the information. I do have my deputy on the line, if she can jump in. Nicole Blissenbach.
Ms. Blissenbach, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. The way the law is written with regard to the penalties under Chapter 181.101 is the 1/15 is related to commissions when an employee earns commissions. It is in paragraph A of 181.101. The penalty for an employee who does not earn commissions is based on the daily earnings for that employee.
So what's the, I can't find it. What is the penalty if I have a worker who's paid hourly? What's the penalty?
Ms. Blissenbach.
Thank you, Chair. It would be based on their daily earnings. So if a person is typically working 8 hours a day, it would be that hourly rate times the 8 hours a day. For each day after the commissioner makes the demand, after the waiting period, then the penalty would start to take effect.
Senator Johnson Stewart.
So that's an important answer. So my question, and I'm not on audio here, but I'm on audio here. Am I doing it right?
Correct.
Okay. My question is there an actual penalty that is paid to the Department of Labor and Industry, or is the employer just required to pay the worker for the 20 days of lost wages? Is there an actual penalty assessed for hourly workers?
Ms. Blissenbach or Commissioner?
I can handle this one if that's okay, Commissioner.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. There are two different, so this penalty in that provision that we were just speaking to applies to, it would go to the worker. Penalties that may go to the department are under a different provision, and that is what the commissioner referenced when she talked about up to $1,000 penalty for repeat and willful violations of the notice provision.
Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you. That makes it very clear. So I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but he was talking about excessive penalties. I want to point out that I don't think $1,000 is an excessive penalty. I just want to give some brief insight into this. With the exception of Mr. Dornink, I didn't hear an employee's perspective. And also in the room, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the construction industry, but let me say on the record, and with plenty of shame, but with total innocence, I have been guilty of wage theft myself. It is extremely easy to do it as an employer. Just quickly, I Googled what is the prevailing wage, the minimum wage for a worker on construction right now in 3 areas where my company currently sends civil engineering technicians. We have many projects in the metro area where the minimum wage is $38.06 an hour. We have many employees in Duluth where the minimum wage is $28.72 an hour. And we have 2 employees in Wilmer where the minimum wage is $22.38 an hour. Now, my company most often works for the government, but once in a while we have a contract where we work for the contractor. When we are employed to test the contractor's work, we must pay prevailing wage. My employees don't know who they're working for when they go out on job site because it's very ambiguous. Everybody's doing the same work. It's just whether you're doing quality assurance or quality control. That person who goes out to these jobs might typically make, let's say, $20 an hour. So I did the quick math, and if I'm a bad employer, which I have been innocently, and I have paid back much more than 20 days worth of work. But if I send my employee that makes $20 an hour out to Duluth to grab a sample or to do something, not knowing that I was subject to minimum wage rates, I really should have been paying him $38.06. He doesn't know that. I sometimes don't know that. And on every highway project, we are required to submit our wage reports to MnDOT through a very antiquated system. I snuck out and asked my HR person how long it takes for us to get those wage report reviews back. Sometimes it is months. So if I innocently pay my employee almost half of what I should be paying him, it's on my goodwill to even tell him. He doesn't know. And in fact, I have done that. And anybody who wants to come look at our records, we have always paid back every single hour, overtime included. My point is that even for innocent and very good-hearted employers, it is very easy to get confused. As the woman from ABC mentioned, we have people going all over. And if you just quick Google minimum wage reports, if a guy's being a laborer and then he goes and he directs traffic, he needs to keep track of those hours because there's different wage rates. Now, I'm almost done, I promise. I did quick math. If I decided to cheat my $20 an hour employee out of 6 months of work without overtime, I would have underpaid him $17,280. 1/15 of that, which I thought was a penalty, is only $1,100. $1,000, big deal as far as I'm concerned if I'm a corrupt employer. Now, I'm not a corrupt employer, and I have back paid, sometimes to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. We do that because we feel it's good to do it, obviously, but also because we get audited by MnDOT, and as I said, every dollar is tracked. My point is that 20 days, if I was not a good-hearted woman with a heart of gold, 20 days, I can do the math. If I cheat him for 20 days, it doesn't cost me very much, and I'm happy to pay him back. But I don't think that's fair to my workers. So I love this bill for many reasons, and I thank Senator Pratt, but I think the 20-day maximum cap is grossly unfair and just not, it doesn't make sense in the construction industry where so many people are subject to wage theft or wage underpayment, if we're going to sugarcoat it a little bit, even with the best intentions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Johnson Stewart. Senator Rarick, then Senator Champion.
Madam Chair, may I to
Senator
that
Pratt.
point? Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll let the department correct me if I state anything incorrectly. Senator Johnson Stewart, we're not talking about limiting the amount of wages that can be claimed in arrears. If you owe an employee 3 months of wages, then the demand from the Department of Labor will ask you for 3 months of wages that you've underpaid. We're not limiting the amount of wages that can be claimed as mispaid. Once the Department of Labor issues a demand for payment, you have 10 days to comply with that demand of payment. Let's say you disagree with that option and you want to pursue an appeal. After 10 days, then you start accruing 1 day of wage in penalty in excess of what you've not paid in penalty. And so that's where the 20-day cap comes in, not on what you underpaid an employee. They still have the ability to collect that. This is the penalty on top of what you've underpaid them that's being capped. And so I completely agree with you. I want to make sure that if an employee is underpaid and they go to the Department of Labor asking for help, that they get that help and that they get the wages that they're earned. But I also want to make sure that we've got an incentive for both sides to come to the table and reach that agreement. Now, I've reached out to labor representatives and the commissioner several times saying, okay, if it's not 15 days, and I understand where you believe maybe that's not enough of an incentive for somebody to comply with that 10-day note, what would be a better way of doing it? I've asked that question. I've never gotten a reply. And so the reason for moving this to 20 days is to continue to signal the fact that, yes, we're willing to negotiate this item. We just think there needs to be a cap that balances the interests of the employees and the employers together, not giving one an excessive advantage over the other. If the Department of Labor believed that 15 days was an excessive advantage to employers in the past, I believe the unlimited penalty on top of what they were earned in wages and arrears is unlimited, gives an excessive advantage to the employee.
Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. I appreciate that. So it's still, though, that this the 20 days only applies to commissions, correct?
No.
But isn't that what the commissioner just told us, that it's
The
1,000?
1/15th applies to the commissions. Otherwise, they're paid in penalty their average daily salary.
So average daily salary, and that would include overtime?
I'd have to go to Ms. Blissenbach for that.
Okay, but that is helpful, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I was going to talk about a number of the things that Senator Pratt responded to. Yeah, if wage theft occurs, all of the wages that were withheld from the employee are recoverable. That is not what the 20-day cap is about. That is in regards to the penalty that would be put in place if the employer, once notified, remains non-compliant. So I'm hoping that is clear to people, that all wages that have been kept from employees are recoverable. I think this is something that, when this bill first came forward, it was kind of run through fairly quickly. There were a number of people who were bringing up a lot of points, saying there are questions around this. And I know Senator Pratt has worked very hard to make sure that we look back, and as we see the experience of so many employers, we heard including our schools, our electric co-ops spoke to me about it, so many that are doing everything right, but the uncertainty of how to fill out all the paperwork, how they have to report it, they need some type of ability to be flexible. And what Senator Pratt is bringing forward in this bill is just that. And from my experience watching him work on this bill, he is not getting any cooperation in return for what he is asking and trying to get help for these good employers. And like we heard, 99% of the employers are good. And Senator Johnson Stewart even alluded to the fact that even the best employers can make mistakes, and they should not be penalized for that. And that's what Senator Pratt is trying to get at with this bill. This bill, the language still allows the state to go after those who are willfully withholding wages from people and stealing them. These changes are to help the good employers when they make a mistake. So thank you, Senator Pratt. And I get one last little comment. It was brought up that some of the changes aren't needed because the agency is already doing that. I can't tell you the number of constituents that I've had to help over the last 8 years who have said the agency has just reinterpreted something that's in statute or changed what they're doing, and now they need help. So putting these changes, just because the agency is doing it now, doesn't mean it will continue. And so putting it in statute is the way to ensure that it continues to be done that way. Thank you, Senator Pratt. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Rarick. Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt, for all of your work. I have a number of questions. I'm going to try to condense them down because I know that we are running short on time.
Thank
But because we're talking about penalties, can I ask Senator Pratt to tell me how many penalties have been assessed thus far?
Senator Pratt.
Senator Champion, I'd have to go to the department for that, but I believe the answer is probably, I'd have to go to the department for that.
Commissioner Robertson or Ms. Blissenbach?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner?
there have been no penalties assessed to date.
So, Madam Chair, I just want to thank the Commissioner for that because I think that's important because when we hear a number of people talk about penalties, I think we all have good intention, but it sounds like it's pretty provocative and it's really saying that there's a problem that we don't see. So my other question is, Senator Pratt, and while I'm asking Senator Pratt a question, can we ask Mr. Hill to come back to the table?
Yes. Go ahead, Senator Champion.
So Senator Pratt, it is my understanding that you were talking earlier about the start of employment and a person has to work before there's this notice that it's required. Isn't it true that that person then is working and is making some wage and there is no requirement under this bill for them to know exactly what their wage is based on the way you have the bill structured? Am I reading that correctly?
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Champion, a couple of things along that line. The idea when we set up the wage theft notification was, much like I used to experience where I would accept a position and I would get an offer letter from my employer laying it out. That was the intent of this, and it's become much more than that. What we also found was it was very difficult to get the form to the employee and signed before they started. Oftentimes they were coming in and doing all sorts of paperwork beginning the first day, and they had several days to get that paperwork completed. So the idea behind this is to, as Mr. Church said, to better align the documentation for the employee notification with other types of documents that the employees are required to sign out or to sign. And so that's simply the intent. Nothing around it. And I'll let Mr. Hill talk about the temp agencies or the temporary staffing agencies again.
Madam Chair, can I
Senator
ask
Champion.
Senator Pratt a question before we go to the staffing agency? Because perhaps I missed it, Senator Pratt, but I didn't hear the answer to my question. My question was, is it not true that an employee is then working 7 days at some rate without being clear as to what that rate is by looking at this change that you have put forward? And I just want to make sure that we're on the same page because I understand the intent. I thought the whole intent of the wage stuff is to avoid confusion around the wage and saying someone is supposed to be paid something that they're not being paid. So I just want to make sure that we're clear about that. And if Madam Chair then wants to go to Mr. Hill before I ask Mr. Hill a question, that's fine.
All right. Mr. Hill.
Madam Chair, I thought Senator Pratt was going to answer the question.
Oh, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Champion. The original law said at the start of at employment, and we would still expect that to be the standard in most cases. Again, the idea is that what we're hearing from employers on the ground who interact with employees is that this is a very difficult standard. And I think it would be better to have the employee working and get the wage theft notification. They will know what they've been earning. They're not going to be earning a wage sub of what they've been earning and working. It's probably been communicated verbally, and this is just the documentation piece that is being covered. So to your answer, I think the answer is no, in that I can't imagine somebody would take a job and start working without some sort of indication of what they'd be earning. And all we're doing is providing flexibility in how it is documented.
So,
Senator Champion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Senator Pratt, I think you mean well, and I think the way that you have positioned it, speaks to your heart and what you would think, what you wouldn't do. But when you think in terms of the way the law is written, individuals look at the law and they say, hey, I don't have to notify this person can start working, and I can have one impression of what you said, and then you can come and have another. But we're supposed to align it so that there's no confusion. And I'm just afraid that the way this is put forward right now means that a person starts working, there's a lack of confusion, there's no need for there to be a clarity on the front end of the relationship, and it lends itself to confusion 7+ days later. And so I do have a couple more questions, Madam Chair.
Madam
so I
Chair,
want to take direction from you.
Before we get off that, Madam Chair,
Senator Pratt.
let me just say, Senator Champion, I might have said I think, but that's what employers have told me is happening, and so that's what I've communicated.
Senator Champion.
So Senator Pratt, I almost said Chair Pratt because I'm so used to calling you Chair Pratt. That may be what that employer told you, but we have so many different employers across this great state, and I'm not taking the position that they mean to do anything negative, but I think clarity is good for the soul. And what we have here just seems to lend itself to further confusion, which is not what we were supposed to do with the wage theft bill. It was supposed to align around knowledge. So Senator Pratt, the signature or acknowledgement that you talked about earlier before I get to Mr. Hill, because I have a question for him, is that, please help me understand. So is it that a person is employed and then I as an employer could sign that some page and say, I'm acknowledging that this person is working for me? Does it have to have, rate of pay on there, anything? Can you help me understand that before I go to Mr. Hill?
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Champion, the wage theft notice and the signing of the wage theft notice was never meant to be a contract of employment. And all we're simply doing is saying that the signature by the employer and the employee does not constitute a contract. What it does is it acknowledges that this is the information that both have agreed to as part of the employer-employee relationship.
Got it. So, Madam Chair, may I ask
Senator Champion.
Mr. Hill a question?
Yep.
Mr. Hill, you testified earlier to, you say the struggle that staffing agencies have, and you said that one of the challenges is that when an employee starts with a staffing agency or comes in and you place them somewhere, that you don't know what their rate of pay would be. I just want to make sure, first of all, that I clearly understand that that's what you said.
Senator Mr.
Wow,
Hill.
I got a promotion.
Mr. Hill.
I don't think so.
Madam Chair and Senator Champion, I believe what I said or what I intended to say was when a staffing agency originally onboards somebody, we may have them sign their W-9 and provide a lot of the information that you would collect from someone when you're going to employ them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we have a placement for them. We may have interviewed them. We then have to go out and find a place to place that person. So at that initial conversation, we don't know if it's a fit, if we have an opening. And so when, I guess the hiring is probably maybe I use that word incorrectly, but when we onboard somebody and put them into our system, and then we can go out and find them a job, we don't know necessarily at that point what job they're going to be placed in or what their wages are going to be.
Madam Chair.
Senator,
So, Mr. Hill, you would agree with me then, you misspoke, because this is not about your onboarding. This is about once you are offering someone a job at a rate of pay, that notice should be provided to that employee so they know what their rate of pay is, because by that time, you know who the contract is going to be with, what the rate of pay is supposed to be, how long of a contract that's going to be with that employer. You would have that information. And if you would have that information, is that something that you then would provide to the employee?
Mr. Hill.
Yes, Senator, I don't believe I misspoke, but yes, when we go to place them, we would have that information. What we're asking for is some flexibility in the timing for that. It's not when the person comes in and fills out their original paperwork. And so we would like a little bit of flexibility. We may end up moving them from one location to another. And I think the best example that we have of where we run into a challenge is in our healthcare practice that some of my members have. If you are you've been onboarded and you've been employed, let's say by Hospital X, and you have received the paperwork and the documentation and the pay rate for Hospital X. And Hospital Y calls us at 6 o'clock tonight and says, we need a nurse for the emergency room at 10:30 tonight. And we have a nurse that's worked at one of the hospitals, but not the other. We've not disclosed to them what that pay rate is. We're certainly going to tell them when we call, we have an opening, we need you to go to Hospital Y, here's what the rate is, but it may not be possible for us to get that paperwork turned around, which the current law says we have to do before the person's placed. And so that is where we're looking for some flexibility. We want to disclose what our individuals are going to be paid. And that would be one of the first things we would disclose, or that my clients would disclose in those situations. But what we're looking for is some flexibility in getting that paperwork turned around so that that shift can be filled, that need can be met, and we can catch up after the fact on the paperwork.
Senator Champion.
Okay, Madam Chair, and I'll wrap up here. I have two last questions. So, Mr. Hill, wouldn't you agree, or maybe you won't agree, that the way you position that, there is a difference between onboarding, which is someone coming on and you're not sure, you're still going through your due diligence in order to see what's going on, where there would be no requirement in order to talk about what the person needs. And your example of when you call a nurse and you say, who may have worked at Hospital A, but now you want them to go to Hospital B, that there may be a difference in the pay rate amongst Hospital A and Hospital B. And if there is, then if you want that person to go from Hospital A to Hospital B, that you should tell them and they should be clear as to what that rate should be, because if they believe that they're going to get a higher rate and in fact there's going to be a lower rate, it will cause confusion, which is the very thing that we do not want, because we do not want an employee to be confused as to what the pay rate should be. So that's my question for Mr. Hill. And then when Senator Pratt has a chance to answer a question, Senator Pratt, my question for you is just around the notice of when somebody violates giving written notice. The example that was given, I think you gave it, Senator Pratt, or someone did, is that if one employer, did not submit something for 12 employees, that you would want that to be considered one violation and not 12 violations. So then my question is, if that same employer comes back a second time, and then there's 12 more employees that he or she did not provided the same information. Would that second time be considered another warning or just one violation? So those are my last two questions. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience, and thank you to the committee for their patience as well. So
Thank you, Senator Champion. And Mr. Hill and Senator Pratt, since this bill is being laid over, there'll be more time that we can discuss this, but if you can make comments brief, because we got to get out.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Senator Champion, the challenge we have is getting that paperwork in on or before the starting point for those nurses, for those individuals in that medical position. It may be the middle of the night. We may not be able to get that paperwork back, get it collected before that shift starts. And that is our challenge. We're not suggesting we don't want to disclose what they're going to be paid. We absolutely will do that. One of the other provisions in this bill would allow you to perhaps provide a pay range or a list of payments. So if we could put on that document that if you work at hospital A, you get this amount. If you work at hospital B, you get this amount. We are not opposed to disclosing that and getting the paperwork in. We just need some flexibility in the timing, and that's what we're hoping to do.
Thank you. Senator Pratt, any closing comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, to Senator Champion's question, what we would say, Senator Champion, is if somebody made a mistake and it was found that those mistakes, as long as they were similar, would constitute one violation, and they would get a written warning. Upon the second violation, I would say they've used up their grace period, and they would be subject to the discretion of being fined by the agency. And so, Madam Chair, you asked for closing comments, and let me just say there is no intent in this bill to weaken any of the protections that employees have. Many of the changes, as Mr. Reynolds mentioned, have already been, and the Commissioner, have already been implemented. And, I want to thank the Commissioner for her support and partnership in doing that. Because the original rollout of this law did in fact exceed the legislative intent. And the changes by codifying this, as was mentioned earlier, and I can't remember who mentioned, I think it was Senator Rarick, ensures that we prevent an activist commissioner from exceeding the legislative intent in the future. That's what we're trying to do. We agree with many of the changes the department has made, and we want to codify them in law because we work together to get those implemented. The goal of the original wage theft legislation was to identify and target the bad employers, as Ms. Schothorst said, without imposing costly or burdensome new mandates. And I explained kind of the idea behind some of those, but as we've heard from Mr. Hill and Ms. Lewis and Mr. Tersch, that there are challenges with that where we need to have some flexibility. And in regards to the testimony against the bill, I just want to reiterate that for those items that are that specifically the timing and the maximum penalty, I have always been open to looking at new options for what those should be. The goal of this committee has always been to balance the rights and responsibilities of employers and employees, not to give one an unfair advantage over the other. And Madam Chair, that's what this legislation is intended to do.
Thank you so much, Senator Pratt, for presenting your bill. And Senate File 919 will be laid over for possible inclusion. And with that, we are adjourned.